one of the world's worst online sex offenders.
Most prolific online child abusers has been sentenced to life in prison.
McCartney's technique was tried and tested.
When you open Snapchat for the first time,
basically she just friended him on Snapchat. She thought he was a girl at the time, and that just progressed to sending a topless photo.
Shot herself, get some rags and put pressure on that wound, find out to control the bleeding, and I need to secure the firearm.
Why was the biggest question. Why?
Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are covering another case that has been making the headlines in the UK, but it has been making headlines internationally. Because just last week a story came out about a man called Alexander McCartney, who lived a very isolated life. He spent all of his time pretty much locked in his bedroom, immersed in the online gaming world, until one day Alex turned to Snapchat. He created a fake profile pretending to be a teenage girl. He started conversations with other very young girls. And I'm talking between the ages of 10 and 16 years old, so very young children. He would win their trust, charm them, flirt with them, and then manipulate them until he convinced these young girls to send nude or topless photos to him. Alex would then use these photos to blackmail these little girls to carry out some of the most horrific sexual acts you can imagine. And the victim number for today's case runs into the thousands. Alex McCartney's paedophile operation spanned the globe until one day Alex pushed his despicable and twisted sexual blackmail too far, and it resulted in a young girl taking her own life. And her name was Simmeron Thomas. She was just 12 years old. Her story is absolutely harrowing. However, her family, they want to spread awareness of this case to try and prevent anything like this happening to any other child ever again, which is why I wanted to cover this case today. It is an important case to talk about, and this case needs to be heard. So with all of that being said, let's jump in. I just want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, and that is June's Journey. Now, you guys know how much I absolutely love June's Journey. I've talked about June's Journey so much on this channel already. It is one of my favorite games. It is a hidden object murder mystery game where you play as Detective June Parker, and the story is based around the murder of June's sister, which you have to solve. Many secrets get uncovered. You have to put on your little detective hat, and the game is packed full of drama. It is just a game that completely engages my brain. It is the perfect distraction, and I just love finding all of the hidden objects. It is also set in the glamorous 1920s. I mean, look at these sets. They are so beautifully designed. But not just that, you get to decorate your very own June's Journey island. And you all know I love this part of the game. I also know from the comments that I get that so many of you already play June's Journey and are as obsessed as I am. There are also so many events going on. So if you don't already play June's Journey, what are you waiting for? Because I highly recommend it. And June's Journey is available on iOS and Android as well as on PC. And you can download June's Journey for free by going to the link in my description box. And going through that link rather than going to the App Store really does help out this channel because it lets June's Journey know that you came from this video. So thank you again to June's Journey for sponsoring today's video, but thank you to every single one of you guys watching right now, because truly without all of you guys I wouldn't get opportunities like this. And now let's jump into today's case. Alexander McCartney, also known as Alex, was born on the 2nd of April 1998, making him an Aries. And he grew up just outside of Newry, which is in Northern Ireland, where he lived with his parents and his 3 siblings. Now, growing up, it is said that Alex led a very lonely and isolated childhood. He grew up in a very small community. It was described as being as remote as you can get. There was a church, a few businesses, and pretty much nothing else. He was very isolated in school as well. He has been described as quite shy, socially awkward. Others have described him as a, quote, strange and antisocial introvert. Apparently, he just lived his whole life online. He was a stranger in his own community. He much preferred to be at home, locked in his bedroom. He didn't really like to interact with people in the real world. He rarely interacted with the students at his school as well. well. Online gaming was his favourite pastime. He was someone that just kind of kept his head down, kept himself to himself. Whenever he got on the school bus as well, on the way to school, he would just sit there in silence, look at the floor. Most of the time he would have his headphones in and refuse to talk to anybody. And then when it came to the neighbours have said that the whole family pretty much kept to themselves. And whenever neighbours would see Alex, which was rare to begin with, but whenever they would see Alex, he would never interact with neighbours. He wouldn't wave. He would never say hello. Neighbours knew nothing about him. And then after finishing high school, Alex started attending Ulster University, where he studied computer science, which definitely becomes handy to him later on in this case. And computers, computer science, anything to do with technology really, Alex excelled at from a very young age. But what people didn't realise is that behind this person who appeared shy and introverted, Alex was hiding a very, very dark and twisted secret. One that would affect thousands, and I really am talking thousands of children all around the world. And this is unfortunately when we need to start talking about Alex's offending. Now, I really need to give a strong warning right now. This case is possibly one of the most distressing cases I have ever had to research in my life. And we don't even know the details of everything that he has done, but the details that we do know are so distressing. I feel like I'm getting emotional right now, even thinking about it. So just prepare yourselves. This case is going to be very heavy, because back in 2013, when Alex was only 15 years old, so he's still in high school, this is when he decides to log on to Snapchat and he started creating fake profiles to contact young teenage girls. And we have no idea why he started doing this, but he clearly has very sick and twisted sexual desires. And Alex soon realized that young teenage girls, they wouldn't talk to him if he revealed his true identity. So if he used his real name, a real photo of him, young girls are not going to talk to him. So this is when Alex decided to start posing as young girls himself. He would create a profile name, something along the lines of Sarah131X. Sarah was actually one of his go-to favorite names to use. And he created loads of profiles. He would always list his age as anywhere between 12 and 15 years old. So once Alex had set up his fake profiles, this is when he started to contact young teenage girls from all over the world. We're talking girls from the UK, from Ireland, from Australia, from the USA, New Zealand, Canada, all over Europe. It is said that Alex had victims in over 30 countries. And the age range of the girls that he would target were anywhere between 10 years old and 16 years old. Alex was looking for young, vulnerable girls that were impressionable, someone that would be easy for him to manipulate and bend to his will. And Alex would introduce himself. He would say, "Hi, I'm Sarah," or "Hi, I'm Chloe, Anna, Hannah," whatever name he was using, and say, "I'm a young teenage girl like you. Do you want to be friends? Do you want to chat?" And these young girls would happily oblige. And I can just picture it myself. I mean, when I was that age, between 10 and 16, Snapchat wasn't a thing, but MSN was, and MySpace. And sometimes you would get random people add you and they would start up these conversations. And when you are that age, you are more trusting. If someone tells you that they are a young girl or a young boy, someone of your age, you're more likely to believe them. I can really just picture this in my head. And Alex would keep the conversation going. And these conversations, they were very generic. In the beginning, it was just small talk. He would just say things like, "What have you been doing today? Do you go to school? Have you been busy? Tell me what you've been up to." He would just try and strike up any conversation to build up any kind of trust. And after the small talk and conversation had been going on for a little while, the first thing Alex would do would ask for a selfie. A very innocent selfie. And Alex, he is very skilled at manipulating young girls. He knows exactly what to say, when to say it, and he knows how to get what he wants. He would use very carefully crafted language. He was able to make himself sound like someone that was 12 to 15. He was able to come across as relatable, as friendly. And I imagine it was a lot of trial and error as well, because he had so many victims. He used a combination of flattery and persuasion on these young girls. He would always comment about how attractive the young girl was. And once the young girl's confidence had been boosted, they would happily send over a selfie. So Alex had gotten what he wanted. But of course, it escalates from there, because Alex would soon ask for more and more from these girls. He wanted more selfies, full body photos, pictures of them in different outfits. And what was Alex's endgame? What was he building to? Well, Alex was building to these young girls sending him a nude or topless photo of themselves. So whenever they would send over a full body photo in like an outfit, Alex would compliment their body. Again, he's using flattery. He would do anything to boost this young girl's confidence. Alex would also send over a topless photo of another girl that he had obtained, pretending that that was his own body. And he would try and pretend and convince the other young girl that he was currently talking to that they were just two teenage girls sending topless photos to one another, and this was completely normal. And Alex would work so hard to build trust. And as soon as he had the trust of the young girl that he was talking to, Alex manipulated these young girls from the ages of 10 to 16 to send over a topless photo of themselves, which is absolutely despicable. It makes you sick to your stomach that Alex is manipulating these young girls for his own sexual gratification. And Alex started to build a vast library of these indecent images of children. He would save all of these images and he would meticulously organize them into all of their different hard drives. And once Alex had found that he had gotten into a good routine about how to obtain these photos, this is now when Alex's offending continues to get worse and worse. Because once these young girls had sent over their topless or nude photo to Alex, this is when Alex would move on to the next stage of his despicable plan, which was to blackmail the young girls into carrying out sexual acts for his own gratification. Because once he had received the topless photo of the young girl, this is when Alex would reveal his true identity. He would say that he's not a young girl, he's actually a man or a teenage boy, because obviously his offending does go on for years. He would say that he's a predator and he now has a topless photo of them, so they need to now do everything that he says. And there are transcripts available of some of the things that he would say. And he would say things like, "Ha ha ha, I'm not actually a young girl, I'm an old man. I used a fake camera snap app. I have your face pic and nudes. You're gonna do as I say tonight. And then I'll leave after." And once Alex had revealed his true identity, this is now when he would continue to threaten these young girls. He would say to these young girls, if they didn't do exactly what he wanted, he would publish their nude photos online. He would send their nude photos to their parents, to their friends, to all of their family. He would put them on social media. And understandably, these young girls would instantly become terrified, because that is the last thing that anyone would want. And these young girls, quite often, they would say the same thing to him. They would say, no, 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 please don't do this. I will do whatever you want. Just don't send my nude photos around. And this is exactly what Alex wanted to hear, because now he would start to lay out his sick and twisted desires. First of all, he would demand more nude photos, and the nude photos that he was now demanding would be more explicit. He also encouraged the young girls to start filming themselves naked as well. He also forced them into live streaming videos for him, either through webcams or their phones. And obviously, the more photos that Alex got, the more videos that he got, the more he just kept on threatening the girls, because now he had more ammunition. And these poor girls were going through hell. And then once Alex now had them on video or live stream, he would then start to demand that they perform sexually degrading acts for him. It's just absolutely deplorable what he would do. He would basically direct them. He would ask them to get into certain positions and poses. He would instruct these young girls to perform sexual acts on themselves. And he was just sat there on the other end watching. The sexual acts that he was demanding the young girls perform on themselves were getting more and more explicit as time was going on. And these often involved the young girls using household objects on themselves. It's even said that these sex acts that the young girls were made to perform included penetration. And we have to remember the ages of these young girls. They're between the ages of 10 and 16. And this next part, whew. Alex would also demand that the young girls sometimes include the family pets in the sexual acts. In one particular case, a young girl was forced to participate in a sex act with her own dog. And we don't know the exact details of all of that. And quite frankly, I don't want to know. I just truly have no words for this case. It is already bad enough, but it truly gets worse. Because Alex then starts to demand that the young girls start to include their younger siblings in the sex acts that he was demanding. He would demand that these young girls, if they did have a younger sibling, he would demand that they bring their younger sibling into the room. He would then demand that the young girl strip their younger sibling naked, and these younger siblings were as young as 3 to 5 years old. Alex would then force the young girl that he was blackmailing to perform sex acts on their younger siblings. And Alex would just be sitting there watching the whole thing for his own twisted sexual gratification. Again, we do not know the exact details of the sex acts that the young girls were forced to perform on their younger siblings. However, we do know that some of them did include vaginal and anal penetration. And there is an individual case that we know about where a 13-year-old girl was being blackmailed by Alex, and she had to perform sex acts on her younger sibling, who was her 11-year-old sister. And the 11-year-old sister was crying the whole time. She was actually vomiting the whole time, begging to just make it stop. And the parents of all of these victims had no idea. They would be in the same house, in a different room, and they would be completely oblivious to what was going on, because Alex was a monster and he was able to target these young girls through their own phones. Alex truly is one of the worst monsters I think we've ever covered on this channel. I just have absolutely no words for him. And just to give you an idea of the manipulation that Alex used, I do have a partial transcript of some of his conversations that has been released to the media, so I am going to read this out for you. Alex: "Heya. Girl: Hello. Alex: What you up to? Girl: Laying down. I think I might make a snack. What about you? Alex: Oh, make me one too, please. And nothing much, bored. Can I see you? Live selfie snap pic. Girl: Sure. What kind do you want? And I'll save you one. Beware, my face is icky. Alex: Sandwich. Toasted though. Girl: Okay then. Alex: Oh, you are cute. Oh my god. Alright, I used a fake camera snap app. I have your face pic and nudes. You are going to do as I say for tonight, and I'll leave after. But if you don't, then I'm uploading everything online for everyone to see. Understand? Girl: Okay. Now I'm scared. Alex: Stay on chat and don't leave it or disappear. Girl: Oh, okay. Alex: As long as you obey and do as I say, then nothing happens and I'll leave you alone after tonight. Got it? Girl: Oh, okay. Alex: You're going to be my little toy for the night. Yeah, you heard that last statement right. Alex actually said, quote, "You're going to be my little toy for the night." Because that's how he saw these young girls. That is how he saw these victims, as just objects, as toys that he could play with and manipulate into doing what he wanted. And once Alex realized that he could get away with this with no repercussions, because these girls, they were so scared of him. They didn't say a single thing to their parents. They didn't say a single word to anybody. So he just kept going and going. He now started to get better at exactly what to say and who to target. He was targeting girls that were struggling with body image issues. He preyed on their insecurities. He would also target girls that were openly gay or exploring their sexuality. He found that they were easier to manipulate. Alex would send a topless photo of a previous victim that he had, and then he would catfish his current victim and say things like, "Look, I've sent you a nude photo of me. Why don't you send me one back in return? He realized that he had a lot more success if he was flirty in the conversation, if he did send a nude photo of himself, because it made the other young girl trust him. Alex also realized that these young girls were unlikely to say anything to their parents or to anyone really, because number one, these young girls would have to admit that they had sent nude photos of themselves to someone online, but also these young girls may have to talk about their sexuality with their parents, which they may not be ready for. And Alex would always say the same thing: if the girls did exactly what he wanted, he would delete all of their nude photos and leave them alone. He also gave the girls specific time periods, saying things like, if you do this within 1 hour, I will leave you alone. And if you don't do it in 1 hour, your pictures are going to end up online. But he didn't do this. He just kept extending the time, making the girls do whatever he wanted for however long he wanted them to do it. And quite often, Alex would go back to the same girls over and over again because he'd already made them a victim once. He could do it again easily. He wanted to see how far he could push these girls. How much more could he make them do? Sometimes he would demand that the victims come back to him on a certain date. For others, the abuse spanned over months. And Alex's victims, as we know, are all across the world. He is operating in many different time zones. And he was actually doing this so he had access to victims 24/7. He knew what times of the day girls were likely to be available online depending on which country they came from. So Alex would literally stay up through the night to target girls in different time zones. Alex basically stayed up 24/7. He probably only got a few hours of sleep every single night. It is said that he was basically building up a pedophile enterprise. He had multiple devices, tens of phones, tens of laptops, tens of tablets, and he would use all of these devices to speak to all of these girls all around the world. He put his computer science knowledge to good use, making sure to always obscure his identity so that no one would ever be able to find him. He took advantage of the fact that Snapchat has disappearing messages. This meant that there was no trail of his crimes left behind. And he did mostly use Snapchat, but he did use other apps. He did start to become bolder, and he did venture onto apps such as Instagram, Kik, and Omegle. And then, to top everything off, Alex would also sell the indecent images of children that he had to other paedophiles for hundreds of pounds for each picture. It is said that Alex was in debt from a gambling addiction, and this is how he was paying off his debts. Alex also started to take on the identities of previous victims to then catfish more victims. He would create more fake profiles using previous victims' names and profile pictures. This was a very large-scale operation. On top of all of this, Alex also had documents on his phone that contained all of his go-to blackmail messages. So he would literally just go into these documents and copy and paste the blackmail to his victims. It was such a smooth operation that he was running. He was contacting victims pretty much every single hour of every single day, and he was trying to make the process as efficient as possible. In fact, things were so efficient that on one occasion, it only took Alex 9 minutes to groom, sexually abuse, and blackmail a young girl online. 9 minutes. And that girl was only 12 years old, and it's just unbelievable. And the whole process was so efficient that the threats that Alex would use against his victims continued to get worse and worse. He now started to use the map feature on Snapchat to find the location of where these young girls lived, where they went to school. And Alex would say, I know where you live. I know where you go to school. I can get to you anytime I want. And he would take screenshots of their Snapchat location pins. He kept meticulous records on all of his victims. Alex would even say that if the young girls didn't do what he wanted them to, he would send another man to their home to rape them. The things that Alex was asking his victims as well was becoming more and more depraved. For instance, one girl he made take a marker pen and write on her arm that she was his, quote, little toy. He constantly made these young girls refer to themselves as his sex toys. And even more horrifically, Alex started to make these young girls urinate and defecate in front of him. He would force them to urinate and defecate on the floor, but then he also started to make these young girls urinate and defecate on themselves but also their younger siblings. There were even times when Alex would force these young girls to handle their own feces, and he would force them to show it on camera. And on the other end of the video chat, Alex would be, quote, sat there masturbating. Yeah. Sat there the whole time pleasuring himself. There are so many times when I was doing my research, and even still now, I am just so speechless about this case. I just truly don't think you can get any more evil than Alexander McCartney. And the young girls, they would be crying, some of them would be vomiting, they would be begging for Alex to just stop, let them go. But Alex repeatedly just told these young girls that he didn't care. Didn't care about their pain, didn't care about their suffering. The only thing he cared about is that they did as they were told. One girl told Alex that her mother was dying from cancer and that she was already suffering enough, so please can Alex just leave her alone? But Alex just replied, quote, I don't give a shit about your mom dying. Another girl said to Alex that she couldn't stop shaking and she thought she was going to die. Some girls even started to self-harm on camera in front of Alex because they were so distressed. They were so desperate to just try and get out of the degrading sex acts that Alex was forcing them to perform. One victim sent Alex a video of her making a significant cut on her arm, which was pouring with blood. On another occasion, a girl stabbed herself in the torso live on camera to Alex. And Alex just replied, I don't care. And quite frequently, the girls would ask Alex, why is he doing this? What is he getting out of it? And Alex would reply with things like, I'm just messed up. I'm into weird things. I just get this urge that I like to be fully in control sexually. That was it. That was apparently his reason. He's into weird stuff and he likes to be in control. And if you haven't realized yet, we don't know the identities of any of Alex's victims. Their identities have been kept anonymous for obvious reasons. However, in the aftermath of this case, the parent of one child has come forward to share their story and the details of what happened to their daughter. So this girl, she is only known as Rebecca in the media. That is not her real name. She was 12 years old at the time she was a victim of Alex's, and she lives in New Zealand. So she's literally on the other side of the world to Alex, who lives in Northern Ireland. And Rebecca has been described as outgoing, intelligent, funny, very popular in school, has a lot of friends, and she would use Snapchat all of the time to stay in touch with all of her school friends. And in December of 2017, this is when she was first contacted by Alex. And obviously Alex never said he was Alex. He was obviously pretending to be a young girl himself. So over the next few months, yes, we are talking about months here, Alex would talk to Rebecca all of the time. He slowly built up a relationship with her, slowly built trust. He started off with just that small talk conversation. Hey, how are you? What are you doing? He made Rebecca feel like they were friends. Rebecca thought that she had made friends with another teenage girl the same age as her, just from a different country. And as that friendship developed, Rebecca trusted Alex more and more. Alex then manipulated and coerced Rebecca into sending a nude photo of herself, which she sent. And then as soon as Alex had that nude photograph, he revealed his true identity and that he was a predator, and now Rebecca had to do everything that he wanted. He manipulated her and blackmailed her into sending more indecent images. And the images, as time went on, they got more and more extreme until eventually Alex forced Rebecca to drag her younger sibling into all of this. And Rebecca's younger sibling was only 10 years old. And Rebecca's younger sibling, she was completely oblivious to what was going on. The younger sibling just thought that she was hanging out with her older sister. They were just doing sister things and playing dress up, messing around, taking photos. But what was actually happening was Alex was blackmailing Rebecca into including her sibling in taking indecent images. And this went on for a while. Alex was blackmailing Rebecca over and over again for her to do exactly what he wanted. And it even got to a point where Alex went through Rebecca's contacts on Snapchat and used those contacts to get in touch with Rebecca's 17-year-old cousin. And Alex tried to use the exact same method on the 17-year-old cousin. He tried to befriend her, and then he tried to manipulate and coerce her into sending explicit images. He also tried to manipulate the 17-year-old cousin into obtaining more explicit photos, nude photos of Rebecca. But thankfully, even though Alex was blackmailing and threatening the 17-year-old cousin repeatedly, the cousin did not comply. Instead, she reported what Alex was doing to Rebecca's parents, who were absolutely devastated. They couldn't believe what had been happening to their daughter for months, and they just didn't know. It is just so scary that in today's world with social media and smartphones, how vulnerable children are to predators. It is just so messed up. And Rebecca's parents, of course, they went straight to the police. The police opened up an investigation, but they could not track down Alex. They couldn't find where he was. They hit a dead end. Alex was completely anonymous. He covered his tracks so well. And because they couldn't find him, he was able to carry on his crimes and get away with it. And unbelievably, this went on for years. Alex obviously started his crimes when he was in high school, when he was 15 years old. It carried on when he went to further education between the ages of 16 and 18. And it even carried on when he attended university. And it's not actually known if Alex lived on campus when he attended university. There aren't any sources that state either way, but the university that he went to was only a 50-minute commute from his home. And every single source, everything that I have read on this case always says that Alex was just in his bedroom on his own all of the time. So I am pretty certain that Alex stayed at home when he was at university, and he only ever left his bedroom when he went to lectures. So apart from when he left for lectures, every other minute of every single day, Alex was offending in some way online. He conducted all of his offences from his childhood bedroom in his parents' home. And I find it absolutely crazy that his parents and his 3 other siblings are in that house and nobody knew. Alex really did lock himself away in that bedroom. And the years pass from 2013 to 2014, all the way to 2016 and beyond. Alex had now targeted over 3,000 victims, and he had built up a library of hundreds of thousands of indecent, explicit images of children. The sheer scale of this case is unimaginable, and Alex is conducting all of this from his bedroom. It has actually been said after this case that it's not actually known how he had time to do all of this. And it's really frustrating how he is just getting away with this. He has been operating now for years, has thousands of victims. However, eventually, and this part of the case really makes my blood boil, because eventually in 2016, so this is approximately 3 years after the offending started, Alex was tracked down and arrested by the police. Tracked down and arrested. Let that sink in. And it's not actually known how Alex came onto the radar of the police or even why, but the police decided to raid Alex's home and his bedroom, and they seized all of his devices. And when they did, they obtained 4 laptops, 8 tablets, 9 mobile phones, which held 3,490 indecent images of children. The police seized all of that and found all of those images. And they included over 600 Category A images, over 700 Category B images. So we are talking the worst of the worst when it comes to indecent images of children. The police also found chat logs on his computer from Kik, where he would say things like, "I'm willing to show you anything you want on Kik," for lots of pics of hot teen girls. He even tried to keep all of these images hidden in an app called Hide Pictures, Keep Safe Vault. However, the police managed to crack into this and they found even more images. The police also found a suicide note from Alex to his parents, which said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but it said, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry and would like to explain. I've done some stupid things to girls online, and since September I have wanted to end it one way or another. I shouldn't have to live with the guilt anymore. I've been depressed ever since. I should have stopped long ago. I was stupid. It spiraled out of control. I can't take it anymore. I am so sorry. Goodbye. I love you all." That just makes me so angry. If he feels so guilty about it, why is he bloody doing it in the first place? I can't believe he is describing what he has done to thousands of girls as, "I've done some stupid things with girls online." Wow. So it's like, okay, so he's been tracked down, arrested. The police have found thousands of indecent images of children. Case closed. Alex should be going to prison right now and never be let out. But unfortunately, That is not what happened. And I really struggle to get my head around that, because in what world do the police find thousands of indecent images of children and not send that person to prison? What world does that happen? Well, apparently it happens in this world, because at this point in 2016, Alex was just about to turn 18. And in the police interview, Alex started to come out with a load of BS that he had been a victim of catfishing himself at the age of 15. He said that an older man had catfished him and had gone by the name Sarah, and Sarah is Alex's favourite name to use against his victims. And he said that this man that catfished him was pretending to be a 15-year-old girl. And then this man tricked Alex into performing horrific sex acts on camera for him. So Alex is basically trying to make out that he has been a victim of exactly what he is now doing to other young girls. He is trying to justify what he is doing by saying that he is a victim as well. However, this was all a lie. None of this is true. He is just trying to use an excuse for what he is doing to get off lightly. He then also said that this mystery man that catfished him was now blackmailing Alex into obtaining indecent images of other children. Yeah, you had that right. Alex is blaming a mystery person online, and he is the mastermind behind all of this. And Alex even said in this interview that he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. He's only doing it because he's being blackmailed by this older man. And Alex apparently said that he couldn't go through with it. He wanted to take his own life because he felt so guilty. He didn't want to target other children. He didn't want to do to other children what had been done to him. However, Alex couldn't take his own life, so therefore he must meet the demands of the online predator that he has fallen victim to. And the police were really confused by all of this. And they said to Alex, but why is this older man doing this? What does he benefit from all of this? Why doesn't he just target these young girls himself? Like, why is he using you? And Alex's only response was, I don't know, maybe he's just lazy. So all of that is complete BS, a load of lies. There is no mystery older man that is a predator. Alex was never a victim of catfishing himself. He has just concocted this story to make the police feel sorry for him and go lighter on him. But even still, Alex has admitted that he has obtained indecent images of children and he has stored them, and the police have even found chat logs where he is willing to distribute these images. So even still, he should be sent to prison. But what the police actually do is release him on bail. They apparently decide that they do not have enough evidence right now and they need to continue on an investigation. And again, I just need to stop right now because this is so frustrating. I just want to repeat one more time. They found 3,490 indecent images of children. There's your evidence. That is enough evidence. So whilst the police are carrying on their investigation, they place strict bail conditions on Alex. Number one, he is not allowed to use the internet. Point blank. The police also do not return any of Alex's devices. He is also not allowed a phone or a laptop or a tablet or anything like that. So then Alex is released on bail. And what does he go and do? Well, the first thing that he does is that he buys a load more devices. He buys more phones, tablets, laptops, the lot, behind the police's back. And I'm like, aren't you supposed to be keeping an eye on him? It was so easy for him to just go out and buy more devices and the police did not have a clue. And he's still using the internet. And again, I'm like, the police apparently placed strict bail conditions on him. I think in this case, the police need a dictionary because they clearly do not know what the word strict means. So because Alex is still using the internet and because he still has devices, he carries on offending. And I really want to pull my hair out right now because whilst Alex is on bail, over that period, the police search his home 3 more times. But apparently they do not catch him doing anything. And unbelievably, this now goes on for another 2 years. Alex is constantly being investigated. He's actually arrested for a second time, but again, nothing is done. And it is even said that since his first arrest, the depravity of the sex acts that Alex was now demanding of his victims was was just getting worse and worse because apparently Alex was waiting for everything to come crashing down on him. So he just thought, why not? Let's just get worse and worse and see how far I can push these victims. And it just really makes me angry because there have already been so many victims in today's case, but if the police had just done their job, if they had just watched him closely, it would have all ended in 2016. So much heartbreak and devastation could have been avoided, but because Alex just seemed to get away with all of this, his crimes and the consequences of his crimes now continue to get worse. Because now Alex's actions and his crimes would completely devastate a family, and in the process 2 lives would be taken. And tragically, this is now where we need to talk about a young girl called Simmeron Thomas. It is now 2018. At this point, Simmeron Thomas was 12 years old. She lived in West Virginia, USA, with her mom and dad and her siblings. She played the violin. She loved elephants. She loved spending time with her friends and family. It's said that she just came from an ordinary American family. The family lived in a remote farmhouse in the hamlet of Brewster Mills, which had a population of less than 80. She had a close friend called Ashton who lived just a block away from her, and they met in middle school and they spent so much time together. They had fond memories of riding the school bus together, visiting each other's houses all of the time, just generally hanging out. They were the closest of friends. And another thing that Simmeron loved to do was to use Snapchat, and she used it all of the time to keep in touch with her friends, talk with her friends. And on the 6th of May 2018, this is when Simmeron was contacted by Alex for the very first time. And from this point, things now move incredibly quickly. Alex contacted Simmeron using the username Sarah131X. He told Simmeron that he was also a young girl of the same age, and they started chatting. Alex used the same tactics. He befriended Simmeron. He started complimenting her on her appearance, flattering her with comments on her body, until eventually, just 15 minutes into the conversation, Alex coerced poor Simmeron into sending him a topless photo of herself, as well as a video of her digitally penetrating herself. And once Alex had these images and the video, he revealed his true identity, that he was a predator. He started blackmailing her, telling her that if she didn't do everything that he said, he would publish the explicit material that he had on her online for everyone to see. And this conversation carried on for the next 1 hour, 45 minutes. I can't even imagine the emotions, the stress, the anxiety, the panic that Simmeron was going through throughout that whole conversation. And throughout that nearly 2 hour conversation, Alex demanded multiple explicit images of Simmeron. He ordered her to pose in a variety of different positions, both with her in her underwear and also naked. He also ordered her to perform humiliating and degrading sex acts. He forced her to repeat sexually degrading phrases back to him, and he also ordered her to urinate and defecate. And by the end of this 2 hour nightmare, Alex said to Simmeron that she had, quote, done well, that she could now block his profile and he would delete all of the material that he had on her, which of course he didn't. So at the end of that conversation, Simmeron never told a single soul about what had happened to her. She just carried on, or at least tried to carry on with her life, going back to school, hanging out with friends, being around her family, remaining completely silent, but probably dying on the inside, emotionally scarred by this horrific experience. But just 2 nights later, this is when Simmeron was contacted again by Alex. We know that he likes to go back to victims because he thinks that they are easier to manipulate. So even though Simmeron did block his profile, Alex just contacted her using another one. It was late on the evening and Simmeron's parents were actually not in the house. It was just Simmeron and her younger sister in the house, and her younger sister is only 9 years old. So Alex sent the first message and Simmeron responded to leave her alone. But Alex responded that he felt like Simmeron had made him rush the last time, that it wasn't satisfying enough for him. Alex now said that if she wanted him to delete all of the material that he had on her, she had to play with him one more time. Simmeron said no, she didn't want to do this anymore. But Alex, of course, he said that he didn't care, and if Simmeron didn't, quote, play with him one more time, he would send all of the sexually explicit images and videos to her father. Simmeron was incredibly distressed and upset, and she begged for Alex to just leave her alone, to stop. But Alex replied, quote, dry your eyes. He showed no mercy. He just saw her as the perfect victim, and he was not going to leave her alone. So yet again, she was blackmailed into performing degrading sex acts. She was forced to send more pictures. It is clear from the messages that she was sending, she was incredibly distressed throughout the whole thing. I again just want to remind you of her age. She is only 12 years old. Alex then asked her if she had a brother, which Simmeron replied no. So then he asked her, does she have a sister? And Simmeron replied yes. So this is when Alex demanded that Simmeron go and fetch her younger sibling and involve her in the sexually explicit acts as well. And Simmeron said no. Absolutely not. No way. This was too far. Simmeron was not about to bring her 9-year-old sister into this. She couldn't face it. She cared so much about her younger sister, was so protective over her. She was not going to do it. She was pleading with Alex again. She was upset. She was saying, please, 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 I'll do anything. Please, I don't want to do this. But Alex just keeps going on, keeps demanding that Simmeron must do what he says. She must involve her sister in the explicit sexual images. And this went on for 30 minutes of Alex constantly demanding her to bring her sister in. Simmeron was becoming more and more distraught, more overwhelmed. And Alex just kept repeatedly saying, you need to do this. You need to take explicit sexual photos with your sister. There is no other way out of this. And Simmeron replied, no, I won't do this. She actually told Alex that she would rather kill herself. She actually wrote, quote, I will shoot myself. She was very clear, but Alex so cruelly and coldly replied, quote, Kay, goodbye and good luck. He actually told Simmeron that she had 30 seconds to decide what to do. Was she going to include her sister in the sexually degrading images and videos, or was she not going to do it? And then Alex was about to send all of the material that he had on her to her father. 30 seconds. He actually started a countdown. He counted down from 30 to 0, and he said time's up. He said that he would post the material that he had on her all over the internet, and her father would be the first one to receive them. She only had 1 minute to include her sister, otherwise he would go through with his threats. Simmeron did not reply, and Alex was just there waiting. And then after a minute was up, Alex said, quote, a minute is up. Well, ... And then just 33 minutes after the conversation first started, those were the last words on the chat. Because tragically, just over 3 minutes after that conversation ended, Simmeron walked into her parents' bedroom, went to the bedside drawer, pulled out her father's handgun, and shot herself in the head. And from the other room, her 9-year-old sister heard the gunshot, but she actually thought that it was a balloon popping. And she ran into her parents' bedroom. And this is when she found her sister lying on the floor, the handgun lying next to her, and blood pouring from her head. And the parents are out at this point, so the 9-year-old girl is completely on her own to deal with this. But she saw Simmeron's mobile phone lying next to her, and she bravely uses it to dial 911. And the operator on the other end of the phone said to the 9-year-old girl to fetch a neighbour, which the younger sister she did. I can't even imagine the trauma of walking in and finding your sister lying there with a gunshot wound to the head, and having to take on the responsibility that she probably felt to save her sister's life. She ran to get a neighbour. He then ran over to try and help in any way that he could. He ran over to Simmeron and he took over on the 911 call. And the audio from the 911 call can be heard online. However, we can only hear the operator. You cannot hear the voice of the neighbour on the other end. And even though you can only hear the operator, it is such a distressing 911 call.
Preston County 911, what's the address of your emergency? What happened? She fell? Shot herself? What's your address? Is she okay? Are you next to her?
For any call to come through of a young girl shooting themselves in the head is probably one of the most distressing things a 911 operator could probably hear. The operator is audibly shocked by what has happened. They tell the neighbour to apply pressure to the wound and also secure the firearm. And at this point, Simmeron was actually still alive. She had a pulse. The operator instructs the neighbour to move Simmeron onto her side to help her breathe, and that help is on the way. An ambulance arrives and Simmeron is rushed to the hospital, but very sadly there was nothing that doctors could do. And later that evening, this is when 12-year-old Simmeron Thomas tragically passed away, which I just don't even know what to say. This case is possibly one of the hardest cases I've ever had to cover. Just to think about Simmeron in those moments, and she was so distressed that she felt like she had no other option but to take her own life. And just to make everything so much worse, this is now 2 years after Alex was arrested. He is on bail when this happens. This should never have happened. Alex should be in prison right now and Simmeron should still be here. And as you can imagine, Simmeron's parents, they were absolutely devastated. They couldn't wrap their heads around what had happened. Their little girl was happy, she was outgoing, she was confident, she had so many friends. They couldn't think of a single thing of why Simmeron would want to take her own life. They had no idea what had happened. Her parents knew at the time that Simmeron might be exploring her sexuality, but other than that, they had no idea about what she was struggling with. And that just makes this even worse. They had no idea about Alex, about the blackmail, about the images, nothing. They had no idea. Clearly as well, because it's Snapchat, all of the messages had disappeared. They could not access any records or anything to do with Snapchat. And both Simmeron's mom and dad were traumatized. They both suffered with PTSD. And her dad, a 40-year-old man called Ben, who was a US Army veteran, he was completely racked with guilt. He felt incredibly guilty about leaving his handgun somewhere that Simmeron could easily access it. He also reported that he just had a complete loss of interest in life. He then had a seizure. He was diagnosed with epilepsy, which meant that he lost his job. And then 18 months after Simmeron's death, unable to live with what happened any longer, this is when tragically 40-year-old Ben made the decision to take his own life. All because of the sick and twisted desires of Alex. Because of his actions, 2 innocent people chose to take their own lives because of what he has done. 12-year-old Simmeron Thomas and then her father, Ben. But Alex just went right back to his online abusing. The authorities had no idea that he was behind these 2 deaths. And we don't know if Alex knew about the deaths himself. He could quite possibly have been looking out for news sources on his victims, given that he keeps so many details on his victims and he tracks them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alex did know about these deaths. He kept the chat with Simmeron saved on his computer. He wanted it as a trophy. It's just absolutely sickening. Alex now turns 21 years old. He's currently in his final year at university and his victim count continues to go up and up. However, in March of 2019, just 10 months after Simmeron's death, this is when Alexander McCartney's downfall would finally begin. Because at around this time, Alex was currently manipulating and abusing a 13-year-old girl from Scotland. After realizing that she had been abused and blackmailed, she was very brave and she went to the police and she told them everything. So the police opened up an investigation. And I don't know what was different with this investigation because we obviously know that Alex has already been investigated by the police. But for some reason, the police in Scotland, they clearly took it a little bit more seriously. And they started doing some digging from this girl's allegations and they managed to trace her online abuser back to Northern Ireland. They contacted the police in Northern Ireland and then the 2 forces worked together and they finally linked it all back to Alex and tracked him down. The police storm Alex's parents' house, they arrest him, and they seized 64 devices that he's not even allowed to have. And they found tens of thousands of explicit, indecent images and videos of children. They also found all of the chat logs, all of the evidence of the blackmailing and the abuse. And when the police actually stormed into Alex's bedroom to arrest him, they actually found him currently on Snapchat manipulating, abusing and blackmailing another child. He was literally in the middle of abusing a child. He really was relentless in his abuse. And after his arrest, this is when one of the largest catfishing investigations began in the UK. The police had to go through every indecent image and video of every single child. One officer said that it was the worst case that they have ever worked on in their 27 years in the police force. It really is one of the worst cases in Northern Ireland and the UK, if not the world, when it comes to the sheer volume of indecent images and videos of children. Many officers that were working the case needed therapy. And obviously I have described some of the graphic content that Alex had that he made his victims do, which was bad enough on its own. But apparently some of the graphic content was just so bad that the judge in the trial refused to even allow it to be described in the trial, which is unheard of, really. Which means that the details of some of the worst and more extreme graphic content that Alex had will never be known. And I feel like what I described in this video is bad enough, but just to know that some of the content that he had, some of the things that he made his victims do, was even worse than what we know. I just can't even wrap my head around that. And throughout the investigation, police discovered that Alex had targeted 3,500 separate young girls, with the youngest victim being just 10 years old. And that is not even taking into account the siblings that he also abused, because obviously they were a lot younger. And the police worked tirelessly to try and identify all of the victims. They actually used all of the Snapchat map data that Alex had kept on his victims to try and track them down. It was an incredibly painfully slow process. Most of the victims that were tracked down were based in the US. And for the victims that they did find, they informed their parents. And this was the first time many of them were discovering that their child had been a victim of an online predator. I can't even imagine what that would have felt like as a parent, to know that your child had been a victim of someone like Alex. It is said that a lot of the girls kept their secret for years and years, and it was just eating them away. Of course, it had a profound effect on them. Some struggled to form romantic relationships after what Alex had done to them. Others suffered with depression. Others contemplated taking their own life. And despite exhaustive efforts, many of the victims are still not known and may never be identified. In a lot of the cases, the only detail that the police know about the victims is their Snapchat username. And Snapchat did assist in the investigation, providing as many details as they could. And many of the victims that have not been identified are probably still suffering in silence to this very day, which is just heartbreaking to think about them going through this on their own. And as for Alex, he was extensively assessed by medical professionals to determine his state of mind. Could he stand trial? And he was found to have no disorders or psychopathy. He was very withdrawn in his interviews. He never referred to his victims as children, and he preferred to think about the fact that his victims were not real. He didn't want to think that they were real. He said that he liked to pretend that his victims weren't real at the time of the offending because this, quote, affected the state of his arousal. So not because he felt guilty, no, just because he wouldn't be as aroused. He didn't show any remorse. He was completely cold. He also said that he had never viewed explicit images of children before his offending started. He said that it had purely come from just his imagination. And he tried to come up with excuses for his behaviour. He reiterated that story that he was catfished when he was younger, so that's his reasoning behind why he became an evil monster. However, the police, the courts, the judge have all rejected these claims. But nothing can excuse his actions, even if he was a victim of catfishing of an online predator. That does not excuse the fact that he has 3,500 separate victims and the things that he made them do. No, that is no excuse. And this investigation went on for years. It began in 2019 and it went all the way through 2020 and into 2021. And in April of 2021, 2 years after Alex's arrest, the police finally linked Alex McCartney to the death of Simmeron Thomas. And that just blows my mind, because at that point in 2021, Simmeron's family still had no idea about Alex and what he had put Simmeron through. They had been mourning Simmeron for 3 years at that point, and they still had no closure. They still did not know. And as you can imagine, when the family learnt the truth, they were horrified, they were mortified, they were heartbroken all over again that Simmeron went through that. And what is just even more tragic is that Simmeron's dad, Ben, we know that he took his life because he felt so much guilt. Well, he took his own life not knowing what had happened to his daughter. And he took his life 6 months after Alex was arrested. But because the investigation was so big and it took so long, the police at that point in the investigation, 6 months in, still hadn't linked Alex to Simmeron's death. And Ben took his own life never knowing why his daughter took hers. And the investigation still took 3 more years. Police also got in contact with Rebecca from New Zealand, and at this point in the investigation, Rebecca was an older teenager now, and she was so brave. She helped the police out as much as she could. And in March of 2024, this is when Alexander McCartney was finally taken into court, and he was charged with a whole host of crimes. And wow, there are so many. I'm going to have to look down so I can get all of this right. He was charged with 14 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, 32 counts of causing a girl between the ages of 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, 9 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity, 14 counts of causing a girl between 13 and 16 to engage in sexual activity, 58 counts of blackmail, 29 counts of making indecent images of children, 11 counts of distributing indecent images of children, 2 counts of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent, 12 counts of possessing indecent images of children, 1 count of intimidation, 1 count of possessing prohibited images of children, 1 count of sexual communication with a child, and finally, 1 count of manslaughter in relation to Simmeron Thomas. And it turns out that Alex could have been charged with a lot more, but the prosecution made the decision to only bring forward a certain number of charges so that it wasn't too much for the courts to handle. And when Alex finally went in front of the court, he pleaded guilty. He pled guilty to all charges. And it turns out that Alex is actually the first person in the UK to be found guilty of manslaughter, where the victim resided in a different jurisdiction and the victim has never actually met in person the killer. And after Alex pleaded guilty to manslaughter of Simmeron Thomas, the US Homeland Security Department actually wanted Alex extradited to the US to face punishment in the US. But in the end, the request was dropped and Northern Ireland took jurisdiction. So all that was left was for Alexander McCartney to be sentenced. And his sentencing hearing took place just last week on the 25th of October 2024, and none of Alex's family members attended. He was completely on his own. The prosecution then spent 90 minutes describing all of Alex's horrific abuse. They described how he degraded and humiliated his victims. He was remorseless, showed no mercy, even when they pleaded for him to stop, even when they were crying, throwing up, harming themselves. He did not care. And Alex refused to listen to this testimony. He sat in the dock with his hands over his ears, his head down, eyes on the ground. He just refused to acknowledge anything. He wasn't remorseful. And the sentencing hearing was deliberately set for 2 p.m. UK time, so it was suitable for the victims that were all over the world to watch if they wanted to. The prosecution then read out impact statements from some of the victims, and they described how they had flashbacks. They felt so much shame. Some of the victims suffer from panic attacks, depression, alopecia, trust issues. Others feel paralyzed when they are touched by a man, that their childhoods have been stolen. And as for Rebecca from New Zealand, her dad has come forward and has said that Rebecca, who is now currently 18, she still deals with the trauma from what Alex has done. She has a lot of anxiety. She is on antidepressant medication. She has massive trust issues. She has never had a romantic relationship. escape. When her friends go out, a lot of the time she just stays behind. Rebecca's dad has also said that it has had devastating effects on them as parents, knowing what happened to their 2 daughters. And he was speaking out to raise awareness. He wants social media companies to change to make sure that something like this never happens again. He has also pleaded with parents to be as vigilant as they possibly can with what their children could be exposed to online. So then obviously it came to sentencing Alex, and his defense lawyers tried to say that he showed remorse, even though he never did, and that the 5 years that he has currently spent in prison awaiting trial and during the investigation and everything should be took as a mitigating factor. So Alex was stood up to be sentenced, and he closed his eyes, and the judge said that he was sentenced to life in prison. But the big caveat here is that he will only have to serve a minimum of 20 years in prison, minus the 5 years that he has already spent in prison, which means that Alexander McCartney only has to spend a minimum of another 15 years in prison. So he will be eligible for parole in 2039 at the age of 41, which is just insane to me that he only has to spend another 15 years in prison when he abused thousands, 3,500 separate young girls all over the world. Because of his crimes, Simmeron Thomas took her own life, and then her father took his life. If he is released when he is aged 41, he will still pose a massive danger to society. So we just have to hope and pray that when he does come up for parole, he doesn't meet the terms. Because I am sorry, someone like Alexander McCartney is going to be a danger to society for the rest of his life. And after Alex's sentencing, this is when the story broke in the news last week. And this is when the identity of 12-year-old Simmeron Thomas was released to the public. Her identity had remained anonymous before the sentencing.
One of the world's worst online sex offenders was today jailed for life for tormenting and abusing 70 children, although the real number of his victims is thought to be more than 3,000. One of them, 12-year-old Simmeron Thomas, took her own life because of McCartney's abuse. Tragically, her heartbroken father has also since died by suicide.
And Simmeron's family have come forward to talk about how devastated they are and how heartbroken they are over what happened to little Simmeron. Simmeron's uncle has said that the whole family has been torn apart, and it has been so hard for them to come to terms with what Alex did, and that he may as well have pulled the trigger himself. And he should have been charged with murder and spend the rest of his life in prison. And Simmeron's mother, 6 years on from the death of her daughter and husband, she still struggles with their loss to this very day. She suffers from PTSD. She never speaks about the tragic events, and she found the investigation process very, very traumatic. And also in the aftermath, Simmeron's grandparents released a statement which said, "We all have been devastated by our granddaughter's passing. Our lives will never be the same again. We didn't get to see her graduate, walk down the aisle, or have children. We were robbed, and our lives have been changed forever." They also said, quote, "We know that nothing we do or say will ever bring her back. But if we can help another family not to have to go through what we did, something good could come out of her death. Parents, please keep the doors of communication open concerning the evil of some people online."
Why was the biggest question. Why? This is the Sunday we took her home before her passing. She has bright red lipstick on, getting into that stage of her life.
And her grandparents hope that in raising awareness of this case and what happened to Simmeron will help prevent this from happening to any other children. And that is why I wanted to make this video, to amplify their voices, to raise awareness of this case, of what Simmeron went through, but what all of the victims went through. And I just hope that we can prevent as many children as possible from going through anything like this ever again. And the investigation into Alex's crimes is still ongoing. Police have said that if anyone comes forward about being a victim or connected to Alex in some kind of way after this case has made international headlines, the police will speak to them and listen and put in place the necessary safeguarding and investigate what happened to them. And it is just mind-blowing to me that authorities have only managed to identify 70 victims out of 3,500 500, which is just a tiny fraction of Alex's actual victim count. So only 2% of the victims have been identified. There are still so many victims out there, so many children that have been victims of Alex's that are suffering, possibly in silence. And police have pleaded for people to come forward if they think that their child may have been a victim of Alexander McCartney's. The authorities have also pleaded with parents to just be aware of the dangers that their children could be exposed to online. And I definitely think that that is an important message to take away from this video, because even though Alex is solely responsible for his crimes, unfortunately there are predators out there like him that prey on vulnerable people like children. So if we can just raise as much awareness as possible for parents to just be checking in on their children to make sure that they are using social media safely, that there is just open communication, and ultimately it is on social media companies to protect children as well, and to also prevent people like Alex even using their platforms. And obviously it's on the police as well. If they had just done their job, Alex would have been caught a lot sooner than he was. There is actually a documentary being released on this case on the BBC in a few weeks' time, so more details about this case could come out in that documentary, but everything that I have told you in this video so far is just the information out there right now. But with the amount of victims that still need to be identified in today's case, I wouldn't be surprised if more details do come to light in the years to come. And I just hope that if any other victims come forward, if they are brave enough to share what has happened to them, I just hope that Alex does get charged with the offences against them and never gets released from prison. And I just want to end this video reading out some of the tributes left for Simmeron Thomas on her memorial page. A schoolmate, Emma, wrote, "Sim, it's been over a month and I miss you so much. I wish we could pass the volleyball and gossip just one more time. Losing you flipped my world upside down and I still can't believe you're gone." And a teacher in her middle school wrote, "Simmeron, I was lucky to know you. I was your teacher, but in the 2 years I had you, my dear, taught me more than you will ever know. You will always be one of my favourites. My heart will always melt when I think of you. I don't want to mourn for what could have been, because all that you were was pretty darn special. You made an impact on every life you touched. When someone hears your name, they smile big. Fly high, sweet girl. You will forever be in my heart. Love, Mrs. Moiser." And reading those tributes really do break your heart, because she was only 12 years old. She was so innocent. She had her whole life ahead of her, and she sounds like she was such an amazing girl. And I just really hope that Simmeron's family are doing okay, even though how can you be okay after what happened? But my heart just goes out to everyone, every single victim of today's case. And I know today's case was really hard to listen to, I know, but it was an important one to bring to you today. So as always, let me know your thoughts, theories and opinions on today's case, and don't forget to leave me your case suggestions in the comments down below, because I always want to know what you want to hear next. Thank you again to June's Journey for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.